Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I am Zachary Smith, and I'll be honest, I'm not, no shade at the guests that we've had or anything like that. It's more about missing Brandon Rossi's voice doing the intro than it is about missing Alan himself. Alan, I could, do whatever with. He could be gone as long as he wants. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, don't worry. We got another great guest on with us today, co-host Brendan Howe, also of Steelers Now, joining the podcast for the very first time, making his debut on here. Brendan, how we doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me here. You mentioned Alan. I texted him. I know he's at the beach. I literally texted him. I said, "How's the beach?" He said, "Awesome." That's all he had to say. So he must be having a lot of fun down there.
Dude, he's so he didn't go the exact same route as me. When I was on vacation, I deactivated my Twitter. He hasn't done that, but he's been very incognito. He's just like reposting stuff from the site, and that's it. Like, he has not put out any of his own tweets, pretty much nothing. Very silent in the group chat as well. So hope Alan's living it up there. We'll get him back here next week, ramping up towards training camp. But Brendan, I wanted to start talking about the off-ball linebacker group, and it kind of seems fitting that one of the Steelers off-ball linebackers made their way into the NFL Top 100 list today. Patrick Queen coming in as the number 75 player on that list. And, these rankings are what they are, so we could spend some time on that, but I really wanted to talk about the off-ball linebacker group just because that's thinking about things that we've touched on specifically on this podcast as we go through the offseason here. I feel like that's a position that we haven't touched much on, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that group. A little bit of turnover, obviously, with the Landon Roberts exiting. They bring in Malik Harrison to maybe fill some of that role, but you got Cole Holcomb coming back as well, a second-year Payton Wilson, who I don't know how you feel, but I know from like speaking on behalf of the fan base, our perspective, certainly high on Payton Wilson in year two. And then Patrick Queen, who, like I said, just made the NFL Top 100, and you would think another year in the system, the arrow should still be pointing up for him. So what do you make of this group as a whole? And as you sit here right now, how do you kind of think like those roles are going to play out in terms of like, is Payton Wilson going to be a three-down linebacker for this team next to Patrick Queen, or what's the roles going to be like, do you think?
Yeah, so obviously I think it's one of the deepest groups on the team. Maybe I got a chance to talk to or hear from most of those guys at OTAs and minicamp. Starting out with Patrick Queen, obviously we saw what he's able to do last year. I remember getting the notification on my phone of the deal that he signed, and it's uncharacteristic, or it was, compared to the previous seasons. We saw what this offseason has been like, but this team really hasn't signed many free agents historically in that manner. And I remember being a high school junior in 2016 and then signing Ladarius Green, if you remember him at tight end. And I was excited about that.
Yeah.
Played all of 6 games for us. So with that, but they got what they wanted out of Patrick Queen last year, I think. He had 129 tackles. He led the team there. He had a sack, a pair of forced fumbles, a fumble recovery. One of those fumbles and fumble recovery came together against the Ravens. I remember that game, him running the end zone afterwards, kind of embracing the fans. A lot of people wondered, maybe mistakenly, whether his numbers in Baltimore were a product of being around Roquan Smith, which we'll get down to Malik Harrison here, who kind of played along Roquan Smith just like he did. But he's definitely the main linebacker. We saw him come ahead of Cam Hayward in that top 100, which some people are Payton Wilson, he came in last year. We knew about his athleticism, previous college injuries, and he ranked first among all the linebackers of the NFL Combine in that athleticism rating. He had to wait to hear his name called until the 3rd round. A lot of accomplishments there in college, including being a first-team All-American. His 78 tackles were the second most of any AFC rookie last year. So he showed that he's able to play at a high level really early on. Maybe they're expecting the same sort of production out of him on that side of the ball. You remember his interception against the Ravens in that same game that I mentioned. Patrick Queen and the fumble he forced and recovered. That was an interesting one where he kind of pulled it out of the receiver's hands. I think most of the people,
very Devin Bush on Mark Andrews like from 2019.
Yeah, most of the people in the press box are pretty confused at that. That was a different sort of play than you see. Malik Harrison, kind of wonder where he fits in at this point right now. Like, he played a lot of special teams with Baltimore. Ended up with 382 defensive snaps last year, which were the most of his career. And kind of like with Patrick Queen, people are wondering, or you kind of have to wonder if any of the production he had was a product of being around back-to-back All-Pro, first-team All-Pro. Cole Holcomb, you mentioned him. He was cleared to play at one point last season, ended up not having to be on the field, but he comes back this year and he's huge. Like one of the first things that stands out is you see him. I had a video early on, I think it was in OTAs, of him doing a drill with one of the coaches and completely pushing the coach down, holding the bag. It's like, so that blew up there. People saw that. But I see him maybe kind of playing a role too this year, with kind of growing, getting stronger like he looks. And he was a pretty productive player there before he got hurt in 2023.
Sure. And then you got like Mark Robinson, who, really came on in terms of special teams at the end of last year. You spent a 7th round pick on Carson Bruner, which, 7th round pick certainly doesn't guarantee anything. But like, man, going back and watching the tape, friend of the show, Nick Faribault, actually put me onto him. Man, like the way that he moves in space was kind of Cole Holcomb at UNC. Like I could see a lot of that in Carson Bruner, and certainly why the Steelers like him. So yeah, to me, it's a deep group. It's going to be interesting to go through training camp and see how those battles shake out. You feel good about obviously the guys at the top there, and with the money that Malik Harrison's making and being a 2-year deal, he's probably safe as well. But like those other 3 guys, Holcomb making some money and didn't play last year, he's going to have a nice training camp. And then those other 2 guys, I think, are fighting for spots as well. As it relates to Harrison, I wanted to ask your opinion on kind of the way that I was looking at the signing. And I honestly, like, bluntly, and we'll see how it ages, was not a fan, because I felt like they were trying to swap out Elandon Roberts for Malik Harrison, but also 2 birds with 1 stone, replace Tyler Mitakevich on special teams. And to me, even if, like, with Tyler not being part of the equation, Elandon Roberts for $3 million, I would have 100% just brought him back and played the exact same role and rotated those linebackers basically the same way that they did last year. And then obviously, Cole Holcomb to me would have been a nice lottery ticket if he is able to come back and produce, because, 2nd year of Patrick Queen in the system, 2nd year of Peyton Wilson in the system, and then Elandon Roberts just continuing to do the same thing he was. To me, that was the more intriguing option, the route that I would have gone with. But again, I think it was more about them looking for 1 player to fill 2 roles as opposed to bringing 2 guys back.
Yeah, Elandon Roberts was almost a difference in one game last year, the Dallas Cowboys, that they ended up losing. That was a weird game. Remember, it was like the delay. The game ended like 12:30 at night, 1 o'clock.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. So he almost got the Steelers a win by himself there late last year. But that, and you mentioned Holcomb. Holcomb, we still don't know exactly the injury that he had. He wouldn't answer that clearly when he was asked. But I kind of like what you say there with Elandon Roberts and kind of swapping Malik Harrison out, because whenever they signed Harrison, I didn't view that as a top tier signing. I viewed that as he was coming in, he's kind of going to provide some depth with what I mentioned there with the special teams, and even if he just does play special teams and he kind of makes an impact there, then that's good enough. But yeah, I was a little confused at it too.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years, $10 million, like that's not nothing. Like, I know that the structure matters to that more than anything else, but to me, that's not just like a special team side, or at least they're hoping. Like if he ends up being that, I think it's going to be a disappointment and probably wouldn't be back for the 2nd year of that contract. But, we'll see in terms of that. You mentioned, Queen being above Hayward in terms of the top 100. Again, that's not something like I necessarily care to dive into all that much. I'll simply say that I disagree more so with how low Cam is, I guess, as opposed to, I mean, to be honest with you, hear everything that you're saying about Patrick Queen. I thought, on the surface, it looked good and everything like that. To me, it's going to be more about what he does from this point, because now the contract gets really expensive. Like they structured it in a way where year 1, it wasn't all that expensive to them. And I think so, much more serviceable given what he put on display. But now he's going to have to be like a top 5 off-ball linebacker in the league to live up to that contract. Is he going to be able to do that? We'll see. But yeah, in terms of Cam, to me, I don't get it. I guess it's because of age more than anything else. Like to be an all-pro player at his position with what he did last year and be 83, kind of wild to me. The only thing I could think of is they're holding the age against him there. And forecasting what next year is going to be as opposed to looking at what he just did.
Yeah, I haven't paid as much attention to the top 100 since maybe, I don't know, 2018, 2019. I remember it used to be on NFL Network where you'd watch it each week or whatever to have. I don't remember if the players vote on it or if it's like how they feel right now or how they feel about the past season. But if it's how they feel about the past season, Vita Vea made it ahead of Cam Hayward too. And I feel like Cam Hayward's season last year, especially at that age, at 35, I wrote about it after a few games. He had 2 sacks against the Browns, I think. And then he kind of mentioned that he still wanted more, which is probably part of the reason that he's still around here and still trying to make a difference like he is. Just that fact, though, that he was an all-pro. I think last season was I think the fourth time he had more than 70 or 80 tackles in a season I was looking at. So I've told Nick this actually, after 2 seasons ago, I was like, Cam Hayward has all these injuries. Maybe he's kind of on the decline. Like, I wouldn't mind if the Steelers kind of cut ties with him at some point. And he proved me really wrong last season. So I'm hoping, kind of expecting, how much can you expect out of him this season after what he was able to do last year? He's 36 now, plays a physical position. Like, what do you kind of see there?
Well, I think the one thing that he has going for him, and I don't want to talk about TJ Watt, but it's always going to find its way back to him. But with Cam, I think the difference in terms of how the way that his game is going to age is he wins with power. Like, that lasts much longer than if you're a guy that wins with speed. Like that long left arm move that Cam has where he just pushes people back into the quarterback, that ain't going anywhere. So like, I think as long as that's effective, he's going to be a relatively effective player to the same level as last year. I don't know that I would necessarily expect him to repeat that. But I wouldn't say that I'd bet against it either. It's just, if you're putting me on the spot and saying, is he going to replicate that? I'm going to say no, but I still think he's going to have a very good season. Like, I see no reason to think that his game is going to completely fall off of a cliff, again, barring injury. And it's not so much the amount of injuries that he's had. It's just the few that he's had have been ones that have like completely derailed seasons. Like 16 was season ending. The one in 23 might as well have been season ending. So like, I understand where you're coming from. I understand where the fan base was coming from and the hesitancy to give him a new contract, but he obviously paid that off in a big way last year. So we'll see how that continues to age. Speaking of contracts, we got news on the structure of the Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith deals. And, it kind of coincides with the rest of the way they're doing business to me. I mean, both those guys getting raises in 2025, which we kind of knew that that's what Jonnu was looking for. He gets a $5 million raise this year, but nothing guaranteed on either of their contract. Well, Ramsey has an injury guarantee. Nothing really guaranteed in 2026, though. And in the case of Jonnu, nothing guaranteed in 2026. Do we think that this is a case of these guys are going to just be one and done? Or do you think that this is just like, all right, we want to structure them this way and we'll reassess after 2025?
I think a few factors go into both of those. With Ramsey, when I saw that Sauce Gardner got the contract he did yesterday, the first thing that kind of came to mind there was Joey Porter is kind of up next after this season, you'd figure, maybe for a new contract. I'm not sure if Ramsey's situation is connected to Joey's at all, but Porter kind of took a step back last year with the penalty, like the outbreak of penalties that he had. But assuming he kind of improves with Slay and Ramsey around now, you'd think if he has a good season this year, he's going to demand a good bit of money next offseason at some point. I'm not sure it'll be the $30 million per year that Sauce Gardner got in New York.
I mean, listen, if we're having that conversation, things went really well this year for Joey Porter Jr. So I'm all for it. But yeah, it's kind of hard for me to see that right now. But hey.
Yeah, and then with Jonnu, the Steelers do have Darnell Washington under contract until after next season, after 2026. I mean, Pat Freiermuth is set to be around until at least 2029. I think we'll learn a lot about Jonnu's future in Pittsburgh based on how this season goes. His numbers last year would have trumped everyone's on the Steelers, I think, except in the receiving yardage department. George Pickens had him beat by like 16 yards there. Mm-hmm. If he's able to contribute like that, crazy. But like he did in Miami, I mean, or even if he's able to kind of put up some numbers similar to what Pat did last year, or maybe a little less, do they start thinking more along the lines of, do we not need a traditional receiver too if we have two tight ends here that can really kind of fill that role?
Yeah, I mean, I think it protects them the way that they structure this in case the fits don't go as envisioned. Because I think that's a big thing, is that trade certainly got them more talented. You made a 2-for-1 swap, but to say that there's no questions about the fits, I think would also be, lying to yourself. Like, we've seen Jonnu play in different systems in the past and not be nearly as productive as he was last year in Miami. I thought that fit was like a glove, and it's kind of odd to me that for $5 million, they could have just had him back and been able to wipe their hands clean of that situation, not to move him. Because that's all, unless it wasn't just about that and it was about him wanting out, but with the season he just had, kind of hard for me to envision that. So I don't know, squabbling over $5 million. If I was Miami, I would have just given him the same contract structure the Steelers were able to on that and just moved on. But yeah, I think it protects them in both cases of these players. And Ramsey, to me, I think when you look at the way that deal was structured, I can't envision that he's not going to play on that contract beyond this year. They're going to either have to cut him or completely redo that contract. The way that it's structured, I just can't envision that happening. But again, we'll see. Who knows how this year's going to go for him or for anybody, really. So when I look at it on the surface, it's hard for me to see him coming back to that number. I will say in John Oo's case, if he does produce the way that we think that he can, $7 million for 2026, I have no problem with as a number 2 pass catching tight end. So I think that's a good number. The Ramsey contract looks pretty ugly beyond this year, but I think that they wanted to structure it that way to just, again, there's nothing really guaranteed beyond 2025. And that seems to be the way that they've wanted to do business the entire offseason.
Yeah. And I think, like we mentioned there with Joey, if he does have a season that is worth expensive contract, like they're going to expect him to kind of carry the torch forward. Like he kind of was, I would say, on par last season with being the top corner, regarded as that. But kind of going forward, if depending on how the season goes, obviously he might be the one that they kind of center that defensive backfield around for the years to come.
And I think when you look at like what they've invested in him and just the way that they envision this going forward, the youth, like I think it makes sense to do so. You need an answer from his play in terms of what he is. Like right now, I'm not making it seem like it's a small thing, right? Like the penalties in the number of them, it's not like just some small thing, but it's, to me, I would rather have a case of having a player where you got to clean that up as opposed to a guy who like just his technique is way off. He's getting burned all the time. Like that's not the case with Joey. Like again, not some small thing here, but it's fixable. It's correctable. And I think that we can take a step forward in 2025. And if he takes that step forward and eliminates his penalties, you talk about a really good corner. Like that's literally the one thing that's holding him back from being a true CB1 in my mind.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I'm not sure if you and Alan got to talk about this at that time. I think it was last week or maybe the week before with that whole Chase Claypool trade. It feels like it was forever ago at this point now with how Joey stepped in and the fact that the Bears made that trade and now Claypool wants to come back. He explained the reason he was out all of last season. I guess it was some toe issue, and now he wants to come back. I think that's really interesting there too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to be in Pittsburgh, but I mean, listen. So. The athletic profile that he brings to the table, like, let's just be honest about it. Like, I know that the comments are going to say what they're going to say when discussing Chase Claypool, but they don't grow on trees the way Chase Claypool is built. Like, if you're building a wide receiver in a lab, it probably looks pretty similar to Chase Claypool. So, and runs like Chase Claypool can. Now, I honestly think that we probably overrated him based off just the raw numbers his rookie season. Like he scored an abundance of touchdowns very quickly, and I think that everybody thought like this is the caliber of player we're going to see going forward. Was that fair to him? Probably not. But I think, a lot was put on his plate and he didn't answer the bell. And obviously they got a great return on investment in terms of the trade capital that they got coming the other way when they moved him. But I don't know, like he might have to be a guy that plays in a different league for a season to try to prove himself, not only like from an on the field perspective, but just like a maturity level, like show that he's willing to put the work in for a year somewhere else and show that he's committed to the grind of doing so. So, yeah, I mean, again, they don't grow on trees, so I'm sure he'll get another shot somewhere. I'm just not sure if it's immediately like in an NFL training camp.
Yeah, and I was writing a story the other day about what Ben Roethlisberger said about the culture in the Steelers locker room and how things might have changed since he's been here since 2021. And he's obviously Claypool's one of those guys gone. I think 11 players are still with the Steelers that were on that team with Roethlisberger, and one of them is Mason Rudolph, who left and came back. Like just that fact and how much turnover there's been, and what we've seen this offseason, we saw last offseason with the moves Omar Khan has made. If you go back and look at that team compared to this team, it just feels like night and day. Like it's completely different.
I think it kind of coincides with the original point that you brought up about Patrick Queen, where it's just like that's not something that they would have done in the past. I think like just their willingness to turn over every stone. Like if things aren't you can blame them if it doesn't work out, sure, but like they're trying different things every single season. Like they're not committing hardly to anybody or anything until they reach obviously the mountaintop, it seems like. So yeah, I don't know. I don't, again, not saying that this is all going to work out, but I can't say it's for lack of trying if it doesn't work out, because they continue to turn over a lot of pieces on this team. And I think it's really interesting, like had Pat on my other podcast and we talked about this. Like, he feels like so much pressure on his shoulders to have become a leader on this team as somebody that was around that year that you're talking about and got to kind of be like in that last wave with Ben and pick up on some things for him and learn how to lead in the locker room. Like, it obviously takes some time for guys to find their own voice in doing that. But yeah, I think it is really interesting, like the amount of turnover and seeing which guys kind of rise to the occasion amongst the guys that are, brought back. Like, he signed a second contract. That has not happened for guys on the offensive side of the ball recently. So yeah, I very interested to see who steps into those roles going forward, because I think it's going to be very telling. And honestly, like going back to Ben's comment and just like the way that the locker room is different now, I like get your take on this, but I think very intentional how they're going about it. Like, I think we're going to see different people start to be brought in that, like, obviously you got to play as well. But I think the days of like taking those shots and the talented receivers that have problems might be in the rear view after the George Pickens experiment.
Yeah,
That's kind of my
something he
thought on
said
that.
too with those comments was he feels that the team's kind of bringing in these 1-year rentals that don't know about like the Steelers way and
Yeah.
stuff. But
Mhm.
like you figure Aaron Rodgers, everything obviously has been positive said about him, about teammates and the way that he's kind of carried himself just coming in. Jalen Ramsey's another veteran. We've seen play for feels like forever now. I do think they're bringing in those voices. And you mentioned Pat too, like just being around practices, those OTAs, mini camps. It stands out how much he talks, how much like he's involved in things. Something I turned to Nick was I think during 7-on-7s, like he was getting on Beanie Bishop, like each day he would have something to say to Beanie Bishop, like just like going back and forth, like joking around. It seemed like,
Yeah.
And then obviously, there was the whole pit team yelling at Beanie Bishop at that one point with the stepping on the logo. But it does seem that they are looking for leadership in terms of bringing in veterans. And I don't know about like letting that locker room grow, but maybe those guys can kind of show the way of being a leader. And it helps having Cam Hayward. And he talked about that today on the Rich Eisen show about how the locker room looks at him. And whenever you've been in the league since 2011, and some of these guys were like 6th, 7th grade at that point, if that,
Right.
it really helps having that voice there.
Yeah, just wonder like which of the young guys is going to embrace that. I mean, I look at the offensive line. Who's going to be that guy? Is it going to be Zach Frazier? Who, like, it's funny because like offensive linemen, they're drastically different. They're on one end of the scale. You're either like this big personality, big teddy bear, hilarious dude, or you're just like so reserved. And it seems like, he's kind of in that bucket. Mason McCormick seems like a little bit of a goofball, which no problem with, just saying that. So like, I wonder who's going to be the guy on the offensive line that kind of takes those reins from Sam Malo, who's certainly, like, I would say the leader of the offensive line, but does it very quietly.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned Zach Frazier being quiet. I went up to him after the whole West Virginia Pitt thing happened. And I asked him a few questions, and I ended up asking him, like, what do you think of it? And he goes, I said, would you have done that? Like joking around with me. He goes, I wouldn't have recorded it. So he's kind of funny there too, just very quietly funny. And Samalu, it's funny that you mentioned him because I remember whenever Colin kind of took over, he was kind of in that first bucket of moves that Colin made and kind of shaping the team to be his roster and like kind of getting away from what Colbert did. And we've seen that kind of take off over these past few years. But yeah, it's very interesting to me, just the fact that I hadn't really even thought of like the fact of who's stepping up as the leaders in this locker room, because we've seen a few. We mentioned Claypool could have been a guy to carry things forward. Kenny Pickett could have been, and now we're kind of seeing Najee was here last year. He was kind of a guy that I felt people might have looked to, and we'll see it in real time over these next few months, next few weeks, just of people kind of stepping up.
Yeah, not just for now, but like, that's why I mentioned like along the offensive line, even going into the future. But you mentioned Beanie Bishop. We had a question that kind of related to him from my guy J-Mac here. Though a lot of people are talking, feeling like we're going to see Cory Trice less and he'll be less important now after the Ramsey deal. But do you think it's going to be sort of a battle between him and Beanie? What I mean is, say that Porter or Slade go down, move Ramsey to the outside. Do you think that we would see Beanie put into the slot, or do you think they'd leave Ramsey in the slot and play Trice on the outside? Basically, do you think whoever they trust more between Trice and Beanie will dictate the way that they do that?
I think we saw late last season that Cory Trice still has a bit of work to do. Of course, he's covering one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in the NFL, in Jamar Chase, and that game did not go too well for him. But the feeling before they went out and got Ramsey was that Beanie Bishop was kind of in the driver's seat in terms of that slot role. So I feel like maybe they'd push Ramsey out and they'd bring Beanie into the slot at this point, because that's what it was looking like with him playing the slot at that point in minicamp, I'd say.
Yeah, I am a Cory Trice truther. The year that he was coming out, and don't get me wrong, I understand that injuries were a big reason why. I had him as a third rounder, ended up going in the 7th round, and I was like, man, the value on this, if this kid's able to stay healthy to me. And I know that there's some people, not saying that it's agreed upon by everybody, some people in that building feel like he's more talented than Joey Porter Jr. However, obviously you got to stay on the field and prove that this is a make or break year. And now I just wonder, like, is he even going to get the opportunity to show that? Like, if you're, the backup guy on the outside and an injury doesn't happen, how much are we even going to see a Cory Trice? I think he can maybe play inside and some dime, like maybe he covers some like bigger tight ends. Obviously, like you see Isaiah Likely in the division, you see Mike Gesicki, who lines up in the slot a lot in the division. Could he play a role in covering those guys in the slot? But if you go and get a bigger bodied guy like Jalen Ramsey, is that maybe the role that they envision for him? So yeah, I guess I'm probably in agreement as of right now that I think Beanie Bishop would play in the slot and Jalen on the outside if we did see one of those two guys go down. The only thing that I'll say to that is, Trice showed that he certainly had a little bit to go and at the end of last year, but like Beanie Bishop, this is the wrong decision in my opinion, but we saw Beanie Bishop take a back seat to Cam Sutton at the back half of last season once he came back. So, both of them down the stretch last year did not get the run or play to the level that we would have hoped.
Yeah, I remember sitting there watching that Kansas City game on Christmas, and that defense was just getting cut up. that I was ready at one point in that game. I was like, I'm ready to just go home and open gifts to my family. Like I had to push this back here. So yeah, that
like I and again, this to me is more about coaching than it is on Beanie. He can't put himself out on the field, but the fact that they were running Cam Sutton out there as much as they were when it clearly wasn't working, he was like not the only reason, but a massive reason that we were seeing the communication issues on the back end. Like the dude was just going rogue. Like, I mean, there's people talking about it. I don't know anybody, like if there are people that still think that it was Minka Fitzpatrick people were talking about, not Cam Sutton, you're living under a rock. But like this dude was just going rogue and blitzing whenever you wanted out of the slot and just, man, yeah, I don't know what he was doing at the end of last year, but he stayed on the field after doing it. So like, that's on the coaching for sure. But I feel like big missed opportunity last year to give Beanie those reps down the stretch.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ramsey and Slay, the veterans there. I was listening to Colin Cowherd the other day, and it kind of wrote about him saying Rodgers is getting older and you can't count on him to be healthy the whole season. That might be the case with older corners too. I'm obviously not like predicting injuries or anything like that, but I don't know. At that age, it's two corners and Ramsey and Slay that other teams decided to kind of move off of, whether it was for money or whatever there. But it's possible Cory Trice does get his chance there on the outside to show maybe in at least some small capacity.
Yeah, I mean, and the unfortunate reality is like guys are going to get hurt. Like it's very hard to keep the same group of players. It's not going to happen. Like let's just be blunt about it. It's not going to, whether it's at that position or not. If all the guys on this football team are not going to stay healthy.
It seemed like Dante Jackson last year. So
yeah, well, I mean, and credit to Dante Jackson. Like, don't get me wrong. I think they made the right move. I think they upgraded that position moving on from him. But like the fact that he played as much as he did despite the injury. I mean, he had a bad back for like 8 weeks, and he was just like not practicing, but then would go on Sunday, and then he'd like leave the game, but then come back in. Still, like, I mean, credit to Dante Jackson for gutting it out last year because they certainly needed that to happen. But yeah, I feel better about the position this year. I guess the fallout of that, and we haven't gotten your thought on this yet. So I'll ask you, we've touched on it on here for sure, but obviously with that trade opened up that free safety spot, and you got Juan Thornhill there right now, but whether it is somebody of the caliber of Blackman or Simmons, like they need to bring in a safety at the very least. Like there's literally not a backup free safety right now that you would feel even somewhat comfortable about putting in that position. I mean, Miles Killebrew was listed as a safety. He only plays in goal line packages. He's basically a linebacker.
Yeah.
What is your thought on that position? What's the trust level in Juan Thornhill to perform that job, or do you think they need to go get a starter?
Well, I think the consideration was they either go out and they get another receiver, or they go and get another free safety, right? Like, is that still the case, do you think, where they have to kind of choose between those two positions?
I mean, it depends. I guess it depends on who the receiver is. They have the money to do both, and they could create so much more cap space as well. Which is honestly, like, you can make the argument that's why they're waiting for the Watt thing to be the last thing that they do, just because everything else that they want to do beforehand could determine the way that they want to structure it. Do they want to like front load a bunch of it, or do they want to be able to make a bunch of moves in 25 and kind of kick the can down the road with where that cash is being allotted? So, but in terms of like, if it's Gabe Davis, he's making the vet min. Like, that ain't costing you nothing. You can definitely still go out and get another safety. If you're acquiring, and again, I don't think this is going to happen, but just for the sake of recent news here, if you're going and getting Juwan Jennings from San Francisco or something like that, and he's looking for a new contract, and you're going to be giving him a signing bonus this year with a lot of that money, and you're adding to the 2025 cap somewhat significantly, then yeah, maybe it is like an either or situation. But if it's Gabe Davis, which I still think is like the most likely, just from stuff that I've heard, then you can absolutely still go and get another safety, whether it is the caliber of Blackman, Simmons, or somebody else. Those two, I mean, at this point in the offseason, like, caliber of player is still a starting caliber player, but they're not signing for more than like $5 million. Like, yeah. So I don't know. Even Spotrac has Julian Blackman's projected contract at 3 years, $24 million. I was like, yeah, not in July. Like, people were throwing that at me like this ain't happening. I was like, you're right, it's not happening, because he's not getting that in July. But anyways, yeah, I think both are possible still.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the Thornhill, Simmons, and Blackman conversation there. Thornhill didn't work out in Cleveland. It's possible he does better here. I'm not sure they're counting on him to kind of fill that spot. Based on like name recognition alone, I think Justin Simmons is interesting. He kind of adds that like veteran group. I know Thornhill's a great.
Oh yeah, he absolutely fits with every other piece of business that they've done. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Ramsey, like he fits the bill of the rest of the offseason for sure.
Yeah, they're collecting trading cards at this point with the names that they're bringing in and stuff.
Great MUT team.
Yeah, just this offseason has been like, I know it's been talked about, we've written about it so much, but just thinking about it and seeing some of these guys like Jalen Ramsey, I think it was 2016 that the Jaguars beat the Steelers in the playoffs, right? So I was in high school.
16-17 season, yeah. So it was 2017, but it was 16, yeah.
Yeah, so seeing some of these guys, like even seeing Aaron Rodgers in the locker room, I told Alan this is like, when everyone showed up there that first day it was at minicamp, it was like a celebrity was in town. Like, I've never seen any reception like that. So it'll be interesting, like just going and seeing some of these guys at training camp, just having watched them on TV for as long as I had.
Yeah, and a lot of the players on the team probably like grew up idolizing, a vet like that. So yeah, I think that's going to be interesting too. But anything else on your mind before we wrap up here?
I don't think so. There was the thing I mentioned to you about Colin Cowherd, that same podcast I was mentioning. John Middlecoff compared this version of the Steelers to LeBron's Lakers, which I thought was interesting because, with LeBron, they've been kind of making moves year after year, just trying to please him. And I don't think it's exactly the same situation in Pittsburgh, but you do kind of see, like we mentioned, they're just trying to find what works. And that's what they've been doing the past few years. So I thought that was interesting, especially to compare it to maybe the most known basketball player of our era here.
Well, they won a championship, the LeBron Lakers.
Yeah,
so
that's true there.
So I'm fine with that comparison if that also comes true. Also, until we go and get like an Alan Lazard or bring Randall Cobb out of retirement, I don't think that's
then it would really fit. Then it would really be like a comparison there.
Yeah, we go and get Alan Lazard and then we win a Super Bowl with Aaron. I'll give flowers where they're due to Colin on that comparison. But all right, anyways, good stuff. Brendan will actually be back with me tomorrow as well on the podcast. Then we got DB on Friday, obviously, for DB Friday. But Brendan, until tomorrow, tell the people they can find you.
My Twitter is by Brendan Howe, BY, and then my name. I write every day for the Steelers Now website, so if you guys want to check that out, sometimes it's late in the night, sometimes it's early in the morning. So yeah, that'd be great.
There we go. SteelersNow.com. You guys know what to do. Also, be sure to sign up for SN Plus. Subscribers only live stream going to be coming to you next Monday as we gear up for training camp. So be sure to do that and get involved as well. And it's completely free to subscribe right here on YouTube. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell as we hit 16,000 subscribers going into yesterday. We're at 16,003 right now. Oh boy. I mean, we like on Brendan on here. We like to give a famous number 3 that like first one that comes to mind in Pittsburgh Steelers lore. Jeff Reed is obviously very notable.
Yeah, you stole mine there.
But you know what? I shouldn't have even said it because that's not the one that I wanted to use. I wanted to go with everybody's favorite backup quarterback, and I'm totally joking here, Landry Jones.
Yeah, Dwayne Haskins won number 3 too, right?
Yeah, R.I.P. Dwayne. He was number 3.
Yeah,
who else?
First that always comes to mind is Jeff Reed for some reason, though. So
yeah, I mean, success of the team, right? They won Super Bowls, and obviously he had his fair share of headlines as well. So, but I'm trying to figure out if anybody else has worn. I'm looking it up right now because I'm curious. I don't like to do this.
Reference has like a page where you can
They
go
do. Oh, Brad Wing when he came back last in 2023. Obviously, you know, there was a quarterback in Pittsburgh last year that wore number 3. We don't like to do it recent if we can avoid it though. I think Chris Brown, the kicker. Yeah, he was. He's on here. Matthew McCrane. Speaking of so kickers and quarterbacks. That's what you're going to see on this list for number 3. But drop your favorite Steelers number 3 down below in the comments, as well as questions for a future episode, thoughts on anything we talked about today, all that good stuff. You guys know the drill. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing over on TikTok, where we put up clips of the show. And then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH for Brennan Howe and myself. Thanks for jumping in, taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.